I know that having the right people in the right seats makes it a lot easier
Mm-hmm.
because of the structure that we have in each business. We have gotten to the point where we can be anywhere, really, with technology and things like that. I think knowing that there are people there that understand your vision and are working towards the same goal, it feels a lot better.
Welcome to the Business Builder Way podcast, where we help business builders grow leadership skills and wisdom and stay grounded through hero stories. So let's get after it. Hey, Jen, really great to be spending some time with you today. And for business builders, this is Jenn Kurian. Jen is a lot of things in business and life, which she'll get to talk about, but she is one of the co-founders of Wild for Salmon in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, as well as a company called Pride of Bristol Bay, Susquehanna Tree Care, and they own an Airbnb. So lots of things going on in Jen's life. And much like the other videos and podcasts in this series, we want to get to know Jen. So if you're a business builder who's considering joining our group, this is your chance to get to know Jen and somebody who contributes a lot to our community life. And also, if you've just joined, then Jen's story today will help you know who she is and some of the things that she might be able to help you with. So Jen, thanks for showing up on Zoom today, and thanks for spending this time with us and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So you've got the floor. Can you tell us a bit about you and business? And I'm sure I'll have some questions quickly, but yeah, let's get to know you and your world.
Sure. So I started my professional career as a teacher, went to school for elementary education, and started out as an elementary teacher between kindergarten and fifth grade for about 8 years. And as that was happening, we went to Alaska that first year to commercial fish with a friend that Steve met in Idaho when he was working there for the summer. And I think the idea at that time was just to experience Alaska and just be in nature. That was the really cool part. We fished on the shore and did something called set netting. We had a great time, hard work, but at that time the salmon prices were really low, so we weren't sure if we would be able to afford to come back the following year. Hunt, a really good friend that got us started, encouraged us to fish for his son who had a drift net boat. So the following summer, we decided to go fish for his son, Bryce, and Steve ended up, because of circumstances, running that boat for Bryce. So we brought some salmon home with us and realized that it wasn't something that was easily accessible here. And we shared it with some friends. We had a friend here in Bloomsburg that had his own farmer's market on his farm, and he encouraged us to bring it and sell the salmon. It didn't take long to sell that cooler of salmon.
Wow.
And we realized that this was something that we could bring back and offer to Bloomsburg and have this wonderful protein. Each year we went back and we increased the volume of salmon that we brought back to Pennsylvania in small increments, because I was still teaching and Steve was still doing tree work, and our customers just sort of started to grow naturally.
Do you remember roughly, so I picture you're going to Alaska and now you're working on this boat. You're no longer doing the set netting from the beach. You're on the boat. And at what point did the two of you actually buy the boat, buy the license? Because that was a key step along the way, right?
Yeah, year 3, I think it was, we committed to buying the boat from Bryce and sort of making it our own business, which required the permit and the boat. And we fished on that boat for 10 years. That boat was called the RJ, the fishing vessel RJ.
Okay.
Which we're told stands for Romeo and Juliet.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little love story even before this one started. So that was cool. But we fished on that boat.
And on that boat, and partially your business is still like this, you were fishing for salmon and you were wholesaling quite a bit of the catch, right? But then you said you started to bring more and more back to Pennsylvania, and you must have had to borrow money to buy the boat, buy the permit and all that. And then you came back here at some point. When did you start to name the Bloomsburg, the Pennsylvania-based business? When did you name that Wild for Salmon? And when did that become a thing separate from the fishing in Alaska?
In 2004, Wild for Salmon officially started.
Okay.
And in 2001, we brought back maybe a cooler or two. And
Yeah.
then it was 500 pounds in 2002 and 1,000 pounds in 2003. And we started these groups called buying clubs.
Mhm.
And we were operating out of the garage of our home at that time with some chest freezers.
Sure.
So we had these groups called buying clubs where you'd have a leader and they'd sort of gather all their friends and we'd make one delivery to the leader's house. And so we got to meet each customer face to face, provide this seafood to them, and see all the joy that everybody was experiencing. And then it sort of grew from there. We did a few farmers markets at that time, maybe 3 or 4, and the buying clubs was the main thing. And as we began to increase bringing the salmon back to Pennsylvania, the volume increased. We needed to find a space to work out of. And we had freezer storage about a half hour away. So we'd have to go to the freezer storage, bring it to the house, package it for the customer, take it to the customer, go back to the freezer storage, bring more to the house. And it was just sort of a logistical craziness. So in 2010, we bought a building on Route 11 in Bloomsburg to work out of. And so that allowed us to have a retail store and to be able to have the space to hold more salmon. The wholesale customers that we have include like restaurants, health food stores, and we started with 1 delivery truck to go to the farmers markets, make those deliveries. Now we have 2, and we deliver to Delaware, Maryland, New York.
Yeah, I was like seeing the trucks on the road. It always makes me happy to see these really nicely decorated freezer panel trucks when I'm driving around. And you said 2010-ish is when you got the building. 20, and because Ava's, your daughter, is 10, right?
Correct.
So I know that. So Kathy and I, my wife and I used to have a bunch of freezers in our garage too, once upon a time. And it was for chicken and pork. It wasn't for salmon. But I know about when we interacted with Wild for Salmon because you came and delivered salmon and you were pregnant and were about to, have your child. And Kathy told me, like, yeah, she came, delivered all these boxes, and she's like super pregnant. We put all the salmon down in the freezer. And I want to say you delivered to our house that was in the subdivision, I think, the first time, and we were serving our customers. So we were kind of like a buying club, like what you're describing.
Right.
Yeah. And so 2013 and doing that, and things have grown, and I've had the opportunity to work with you. I did as a farm when we were Herring's Greengrass Farm. And then I've gotten the opportunity to serve you and Steve and the businesses as a coach, and then to have you in Business Builders. And so all that has progressed. So you've got the retail store, you're making salmon burgers, manufacturing those things, and your boat is no longer the RJ, right?
Right. It's been 10 years since we built our new boat now, because we built it when Ava was born. And of course, the new boat is called the Ava Jane. So we went through that process of building the boat that Steve thought would be the most productive, and it has served us well since then. So
yeah, and this is not like a boat, like a rowboat, folks. Is it stainless steel?
It's aluminum.
Oh, it's aluminum, 32
shiny.
feet, shiny, and made for being on the bay, made for doing the job that you do. Round numbers. I want to say this past year, I remember it was 50 some million salmon returned to the bay. I don't know if that sounds right.
Last year was 70 some million. This year was 50 something million. I'm not sure what the final number was.
And y'all catch what, 10 million fish out of the 56 or something?
Well, this year Steve caught, I think, 250,000 pounds ish. So
nice, which
pounds,
is
not fish, but pounds. Yeah.
And I think I remember that the fish were between 5 and 6 pounds, like 40-50,000 fish or something.
Yes.
It's
The
like
fishing period it's about mid-June till the end of July. So a good 6-7 weeks. And then other than that, the boat is on dry dock for the remaining part of the year.
I knew you were a teacher, and I don't think it really clicked with me, though, how much that made sense, like seasonally being able to have summers off and then go fish. and do that. One of the things that I find to be interesting about you and Steve working together, you have a family of 2 children, and the two of you are very intentional parents. You're working to create this. You have a house that's sort of a farm, horses, places where your kids can be rough and tumble and run around, and you've got hound dogs, and Steve will send me videos where y'all have been out coon hunting, and you live this very intentional life to give them opportunities to see things. So there was a period of time where you really weren't going to Alaska fishing, but now you have this kind of thriving business in Bloomsburg, and that business doesn't shut down for the time that Steve is fishing like your teaching job did. So you weren't on the boat in Alaska, but you as a mom then have to prepare for your husband to be gone, and you get to be the one who's, if kind of the crap hits the fan at the business, oftentimes you're taking the calls, and now you're active business owner, whereas you had kind of a period of time where you weren't, right? It's an interesting, that whole seasonal thing.
It is really interesting. Yeah, it's sort of take on different roles while Steve's gone, and then sort of absorb those things that he was in charge of while he's gone. And then when he comes back, we just balance it all back out again. He's very big picture, creative, drive kind of guy. And I'm sort of the steady, make it happen, get through each piece. And so it's interesting to feel the shift and then be aware and know that it's going to shift back. So it's a good challenge.
Yeah. And today's world, 2023 world, Wild for Salmon is still there. The boat, Kurian Fisheries, I think is what you call that when Steve goes and fishes. And of course, you've had the kids there now. Last year, 2022, you went and fished a bit and showed the kids, this is where dad goes, and let's actually get a fish out of the net. And they got to participate, which is, wow, what a unique experience that you have. And I know you got a renovation going on to that building that you bought all those years ago, and it's going to be beautiful. And we've been looking at pictures and drawings and renderings in your business builders group. Paint a picture of your business world and what that
so Wild for Salmon exists, and Pride of Bristol Bay, the salmon business that we purchased from the West Coast, has buying clubs and also an online store. But it is still only sockeye salmon. A lot of that is big deliveries to buying clubs on the West Coast, or a few now on the East Coast as well. So it runs similar and parallel, but not necessarily the same. And then we have Susquehanna Tree Care. Luckily, we have a location right next to Wild for Salmon. And so those guys are contained there. And then we have an Airbnb that we purchased about 4 years ago. We purchased a property 4 years ago that was just beautiful, and it was very near our home. So it was easy in that regard, but it was an old Sears and Roebuck house. And it's right along an old railroad bed. It's a beautiful location. It just was very rundown and not well taken care of. So we remodeled that and made it an Airbnb about 2 years ago. And it's been doing really well. It's booked almost every weekend, all through the year. So that's been a different kind of thing, but fun. And, it's great to have people see why people come to our area to do different things. But
the value you're in and where you live is kind of stunning. So you got all those businesses going, and then you are very into, or do quite a bit of, horse riding. What do they call the chasing, like as though you're like a hunting, what you've been doing,
like a fox chase?
Yeah.
Well, we do hunter pace.
That's what, all right. That's
yeah. So not very many, but it's really fun. So it's like a trail ride through the woods with a few jumps. And my daughter Ava does 4-H competition and hunter riding, and so they're cool animals. We like to enjoy those.
And you mentioned the guy in Idaho, and that was one of Steve's mentors. And if I remember right, he passed away, but weren't you all out there this summer? So Steve's gone for this long period of time, but then you two try to create these very intentional family trips out west sometimes, like maybe before or after, right?
Yeah, so Hunt did pass away, Steve's mentor, last fall, but they had a celebration of life in the spring for him. So we made some time to go out and be with the family and did some mountain lion hunting. And it's sort of being an opportunist, like when those things arise, like being ready to make it happen. We were in Maine for a few days camping on a lake this winter, and took our own hounds and chased some bobcat, and did some ice fishing. So we really appreciate the nature and just being out in that space. And so whenever there's an opportunity, we usually take it.
We've hit on a lot of things here today, how the business started, and it has a really unique story. And you sell seafood with a story and salmon with a story. It's one of the things I think is powerful about your brand, going all the way back to those family farmers markets. It's high quality and people really connect with it. So you've got that, and then you have this intentional life of travel and being ready to go. I think there's a lot of people are getting ready to build businesses, or they are, and they would like to have freedom. Oftentimes people, if you ask them why are they trying to start a business, it's because they say they want fulfillment, freedom, and finances. And it sounds to me like you've got those things. I don't mean like you're done, you're finished, and lots of employees, lots of help and everything, and grace of God and all these things have created a lot of that. But I think sometimes folks say they want freedom, but then maybe they get stuck, or they get so focused on finances they forget about how they were going to try to do some of those things intentionally, and they just never do them. Do you have anything to share? How do you do that? How do you live this intentional life?
I know that having the right people in the right seats makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So we have found a good balance because of the structure that we have in each business. So we have gotten to the point where Steve can be away for a week hunting in Alaska. We can be anywhere, really, with technology and things like that. But it's a little bit easier now. I think knowing that there are people there that understand your vision and are working towards the same goal, it feels a lot better. Over the course of years, you do all these things to make it happen.
One thing is, you probably don't see how exceptional it is, what you do and what you are working on together. And you're humble folks, but it's exceptional. And it's probably hard to see that. But what you said there about over the years, you've worked to have the right people in the right seats, for sure. And I know that has been kind of hard won. It's been a journey. And you said time, like it's time has gone past. You've stuck with pretty much the same thing. There's certain things that the salmon, thankfully to this point, come back every year. And every year since you two went set netting on the beach, you figured it out as a family to get Steve there to go catch those fish, and those fish in that bay, that energy kind of fuels this whole thing. But you have these pillars in your season that you make sure those things happen. And then you take diligent effort multiplied by time, then yields some of the fruits and the things you're harvesting, like being able to spend time with your kids and create those things. So it's a remarkable story, and the journey is not complete. So you've been in the Business Builders group. I've worked with you and Steve for a while, and this is really partially how why I invited you into the group. You said to me one day, hey, I like when we would do this work, because I often just learn things and I'm exposed to things, and I want to make sure I keep doing that. And I said to you, I think if you join this group, which you're in our Friday group, and they're women business builders, and y'all allow me in there, which is interesting because sometimes we talk about hair and I got nothing to talk about with hair, but I love it and I learn a lot. So you're in that group, you're a valuable member. If you were to share with somebody who is joining, how are you using that group? How are you learning? What are you getting out of it? What advice would you give?
So I really appreciate that group a lot. Carving that time out each week for my own growth is important, and I think that has made me do that. first and foremost. And then the community of the group, it's really powerful. You can feel the trust, you can feel the camaraderie. And I've only been in the group since May, and it's very welcoming and just great women. The ideas that sort of people share every week, it's comforting to know that people are going through the same things you're going through with your business. And then it's really cool to see how they work through them, because all those different ideas give you other ways to work through those tough things. Also, the technology that we've been talking about as the group's gone on, recordings and personal assistants and the AI has been really eye-opening for me and really helpful to realize that those things are out there and how they could be helpful for me or the business. So those have been really cool. And it's just great to see the success of each one of them as well. So you feel like you're part of their business too, a little bit, and it's fun.
Yeah, because of the way you each show up for each other and put that time in your calendar, then in a sense you do each own a little bit of each other's success. And I think you can take joy in watching what other people are doing and what they're creating in the world. And I'm fortunate as a leader of this group that the people that we have are givers. Like they're givers. They certainly get to take. That's part of it. They get benefit, but they're givers. And it's not a game of like comparison or ego. You all are coming to the group realizing that you're running your own race. And if somebody else is lifted up, it doesn't take anything away from you, right? Like all boats can rise is a good analogy for, somebody who has a boat and has fish. Thanks for showing up today. And thanks for sharing your story. And thanks for being a business builder. I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning into the Business Builder Way podcast. If this episode spoke to you, click that subscribe button and share it with a friend. That's how this message gets out into the world. If it is helpful for us to have a short conversation, I'd love to do that. Send me an email at wayne@businessbuildercamp.com.